I'm Alison Winter. I'm the Corporate Partnerships Manager for Cruse Bereavement Support. And what that means is I work with organisations of all shapes and sizes to help them realise an ambition of Cruises, really, which is to create a world where everyone grieving is supported, respected and understood. And we do that in a range of different ways via working with you in partnership. We could work with you in terms of training your team, help you create resources that can support bereaved people, or just get involved with some corporate fundraising as well for our charity, which will support, in the end, it will go to support people suffering with grief to get the support that they need. So my contact details are on screen right now. I'm Alison Winter. Please do give me a call or send me a message if there's anything in today's session that you want to discuss further. And of course, do ask questions. If anything occurs to you as we go, do pop them in the chats. We probably will wait to the Q&A section at the end, but it would be great to get a discussion going about this really important topic, especially with it being Grief Awareness Week this week. So hopefully my slides are going to work for me. My computer is going really slow today, so please bear with me. Okay, there we go. Right. So yeah, in today's session, we're actually going to be covering quite a lot. I'm going to talk to you a bit about Cruse, who we are as a charity. Some people on this call may be very familiar with Cruse. You may have utilised Cruse before, but equally there could be quite a few people who have never heard from Cruse before. I'm going to also talk about the enormity of the impact of grief, both socially and on a personal level. And I'll be talking about what individuals in the workplace can do to support their fellow colleagues who are returning to work following a bereavement, what line managers can do to support those people, and what whole organisations can do to ensure that they are a compassionate and supportive workplace for bereaved people. As I mentioned before, it would be great to have a discussion at the end of this talk. I do encourage you to think about your own experiences, your own observations regarding grief in the workplace as we go through. As I say, there will be an opportunity to share those thoughts and have that discussion at the end. So I look forward to speaking with you then. So firstly, about Cruse, who are we? Cruse Bereavement Support have been in existence for a really long time now, 64 years. Back in 1959 we started, and we support bereaved people in Wales, Northern Ireland and England. We have a sister charity that operates in Scotland called Cruse Scotland, but we do work slightly separately. We support people through one of the most painful times in life with bereavement support, information and campaigning, and that support is entirely free. So that could come in the form of the helpline, where you can speak to somebody, one of our expertly trained volunteers. It could be that you have one-to-one support with our volunteers, which could be over the phone, in person, over Zoom or something like that as well. Whatever works best for you as an individual. And last year we supported the most people we've ever supported in our charity's history. Actually, 108,000 people were directly supported by Cruse in 2022, which is a huge increase that we've seen post-pandemic, which is something I'll talk about in a little bit. We have 3,500 highly skilled and trained volunteers who provide this support for us. It's not an hour training where you come along and you get some top level notes. It's comprehensive. It's 4 days worth of initial training, and then there's more training besides. But yeah, our first course is 4 days long. Our volunteers are provided clinical supervision. They are also given CPD and ongoing professional training as well. This training is offered to our volunteers entirely for free. So our support to the bereaved people is free. Our training is is also free. Of course, it's not free to Cruse, but it's really important that we make those services are available to everybody. And we're very keen, if you are interested in becoming a volunteer for Cruse, we would love to have you. We are really keen to diversify our volunteer network and have people from all walks of life providing support, because we provide support to people from all walks of life, and representation is really, really important. And last year, our helpline answered 41,000 calls to bereaved people, and again, all manned by volunteers. Right, so bereavement is a huge, huge issue. On a personal level, it can be catastrophic, and really it can affect absolutely every aspect of your life. But globally, it's also a huge impact as well. So there was a report released in it was last year by the UK Commission on Bereavement, and that has estimated that that there is 5 to 7 million bereavements annually. We're seeing it be far closer to 7 million than the 5 at the moment. Post-pandemic, so during the pandemic and afterwards, we've seen an additional 750,000 bereavements above the 5-year average. And unfortunately, the death rate does remain high with an aging population. And the cost of living crisis and a whole host of other factors. Unfortunately, the death rate is marginally higher now than it was during the pandemic, which is really, really concerning statistic, and not one I enjoy sharing. So also the Commission identified that 1 in 3 workplaces do not have a bereavement policy. And to be fair, those that do, it might not really be fit for purpose, or it could do with some improvement, or it factors in with a whole host of other policies and procedures. We believe as a charity that it is something that should stand on its own. It should be something that everybody within an organisation is aware of and can find and knows what to do with it. So if you don't know where to begin with that for your workplace, if you don't have one in place, or if you just want some help with it, that's something that Cruse can help with. So do reach out for that. Oh yeah, and sorry, I moved on a bit too quickly there, but the estimated impact from Sue Ryder did a report where the estimated economic impact of unsupported grief is £23 billion. With a B, a huge impact, and that's every year, as the lost income or loss of the impact to the economy is £23 billion. It's a huge, huge figure. And going further into the statistics around it, 2 million people at any given time are experiencing intense and life-altering grief. So that means that you're not able to function as you did pre the bereavement. And 57% of people who asked, this is again statistics from the UK Commission on Bereavement, that 57% of people would consider leaving employment if they did not feel supported by their workplace. 5% will leave their employment within 6 months of a bereavement, and that equates to around 190,000 people leaving employment every single year due to grief. So for these statistics and many more I could cite, it's so important to take bereavement and grief in the workplace very seriously. Now this slide is potentially a whole presentation on its own, and I won't be able to go into it in enough detail for this, so perhaps this is something we can pick up on another day. But you should probably also consider the support that how you adapt your business to support customers who are bereaved. And in fact, the Financial Conduct Authority has this year released their guidelines on the Consumer Duty Guidelines. They came into effect this year, and it does require that all financial institutions, so this is aimed at the financial institutions mostly, but I think really other organisations should definitely take it on board, is you should consider the needs of vulnerable customers, and to ensure that all your services are accessible to them. Bereavement is considered a vulnerable characteristic, and it's really no surprise why when I now move on to my next few slides where I talk about the impact of grief on an individual. So grief, I'm sure there's an awful lot of people on this call who have their own experiences and have and potentially some of the things being mentioned today could be difficult, so I should have said this up top really, but please do be careful, do be kind to yourself. Do take a moment. If talking about any of these things upsets you, please don't worry, you can walk away. This is being recorded, you can watch it back again if need be. So I do hope you're doing well, or as well as you can be doing today. But grief, it is a natural response to loss, and it is said that the only way to handle grief is to grieve, and it is a process that needs to occur. It is complex, it's multifaceted, and it does vary hugely between individuals. We often say at Cruse that there is no timeline to grief and there is no hierarchy in grief. And what I mean by those two things is we speak to people all the time who come to us 10, 20, 30, 40 years post the loss, post the death of that person, and it's still impacting them today. You can contact Cruse about those concerns as much as you can contact them about somebody who's died very recently. So please, do reach out if something is still affecting you. You do need to talk about it. We are here for that. The other aspect as well, saying about there's no hierarchy in grief, is that people often compare their grief to others, and they do worry that grieving too much or too little, or that somebody's grief is more valid than theirs because they were closer to that person. We want to be very, very clear that all feelings are valid, and if you need help, you should reach out and you should talk to somebody. So the grieving process, grief does not always follow a linear pattern. We've probably all heard these like 5 stages of grief, of anger, denial, acceptance, and depression, etc. And we think it's far more complicated than that. It is unique to the person, and how you experience grief could be very, very different to how somebody else experiences grief. So we also very at pains to point out not to judge another person for the way that they grieve. So personally, you may find that you experience a range of emotions. It could be sadness, anger, guilt, it could be confusion. There's also some physical, oh sorry, the alignment's a bit off there, apologies. So there is some also, a lot of people don't realise that there are some really physical impacts of grief as well. It's not just emotion, it can be very physical impacts as well. So you can experience fatigue and exhaustion from that emotional turmoil that you're going through. You may experience changes in appetite. Some people may lean more towards food, others may lean away from it entirely. So you can see changes in that. Sleep disturbances, really struggling to sleep, trying to get to sleep, stay asleep, or sleeping far more than previously. You can experience physical pain as well, and this is something that has surprised a few people I've spoken to in the past, which is like having physical like headaches, like muscle soreness, like stomach intestinal problems. Sorry, I'm struggling with that word. Aches and pains as well. You can experience a weakened immune system. You could find yourself getting ill more frequently. And even in heart problems, you may have heard people say someone died of a broken heart, and that's actually quite a real thing. The intense emotional stress can actually weaken the heart muscle. So you can have heart problems too, and I've already said about stomach issues. So relevance of this to the workplace, we can see a whole range of behaviours, and I should say that because it is so personal to different people, that you may see these behaviours, you may not. You may see them far further on in the process of somebody's grief. The early doors, they might be appearing seemingly fine when they get back into the workplace, and these things might creep in later on, maybe 6 months, maybe a year, maybe even more since the effect. So these are things to consider when considering the way an employee is behaving. When their behaviour starts to change away from their norm, have a think, and could it be potentially a previous bereavement that has triggered these things? So you may well see decreased productivity. As you can imagine, people just feeling more lethargic, and all those symptoms that I mentioned before, the sadness, the lack of sleep, or more sleep, or feeling depressed. It's quite understandable, to be fair, to experience the lack or decreased productivity in the workplace. Equally, though, you may actually see somebody go the other way and have heightened productivity, and they throw themselves into their work to the detriment of other things. So that's something to be wary of equally as much as the decrease in productivity, and just checking in on that person and making sure they're okay. You may well see that they have reduced concentration and focus. Grief can make it hard for an individual to concentrate or stay focused on tasks. This might manifest as some missed deadlines, or forgetfulness, or a decrease in work quality. You may see increased absenteeism due to the physical symptoms like fatigue that I've mentioned, and sleep disturbances and other health issues. Grieving employees might end up taking more time off sick legitimately too. And you sort of could see some changes in behaviour. An employee might become more withdrawn, they may become less engaged in team activities, or show less interest in work. As I mentioned before, some may throw themselves into work more than usual as a form of distraction. There could be emotional responses, so heightened emotions or mood swings, or like how they interact with their colleagues. It might become irritable or anxious, or quite clearly very sad as well. You may notice changes in physical appearance, such as looking tired. They could be neglecting personal grooming, or they might have weight changes, losing or gaining weight. And all of these things can be indicators of grief. You may see social withdrawal as well, moving away from social situations, because just trying to avoid those difficult conversations. Something that might happen as well is, if people are jollily talking about their weekend, that they might not want to interact with that, because their weekend plans and activities may be drastically different now, and so they don't really want to share what it's been like over the weekend. And health and safety concerns as well. Something, if you're in a workplace where you have requirements of high level of concentration, or physical activity, like driving vehicles, moving heavy machinery, or anything requires a heightened, sustained attention, that could flag a health and safety concern, because struggling with concentration is entirely normal for someone who is struggling with the impacts of grief. So if you are a line manager of a person and you're in one of those roles, and they are coming back after a significant bereavement, or just any bereavement really, check in with them and make sure that it is safe for them to do their normal duties. So here are some do's and don'ts, because so often we speak to people at Cruse, and they say, well, from the colleague's perspective, they'll say, I don't know what to say. I don't want to upset the person. I want to, I don't know. So, and often they might just not say anything at all for that reason. And then equally, we hear from the people who come to us for support, how isolated and lonely they feel because their colleagues don't say anything to them. So one of the things we say really to these groups is to say something. It's Yeah, so saying nothing is it can lead to people feeling quite isolated and alone. So in terms of do's, so if we suggest that you offer specific help, so if you're a line manager, this is useful. So are there particular things that you can do to alleviate some of the challenges or frustrations or anything that they're finding in the workplace? Reducing and minimizing high pressure complex tasks is definitely a really helpful thing to do. Ask that person what they might need. They might not know, to be fair. They might not actually know what they need, but asking them might be helpful as well from a line manager's perspective. Do try and empathize with that person about how they're feeling, but I would say don't say that you actually know what they're feeling, which I'll come to in a bit more detail when I speak about don'ts. Do treat them the same. Don't wrap them up in cotton wool. Do try and be as normal as possible with that person, and also prioritize yourself. So it's these topics, and talking with a colleague who's experienced something might trigger something that you've experienced as well. So being somebody could talk to is really great. It's a wonderful thing, but also do ensure that you are safe and that you're okay as well, and do prioritize yourself in that situation and be boundaried as well. We do training in all of this that can to help with managing these sorts of conversations in the workplace. So I will share details about that in a little while. And as I said before, so don't say nothing. Don't ignore the fact. If you say, I mean, to say honestly, it's just saying something as very simple as I don't know what to say, but I'm sorry for your loss, or something like that, or that's I'm sorry for what you're going through, or something like that. Just acknowledging that somebody has died is really key. And what we found actually at Cruse is that we post-pandemic people are coming to us now in greater numbers than ever before, as I mentioned, but they're also coming to us with more complex and profound forms of grief, and a lot of that is to do with during the pandemic not being able to do the normal rituals or of burying a person, or having the funeral, or do any of those things. And a lot of people didn't get that loss acknowledged because they were experiencing life in isolation. So it really does impact a person when nobody acknowledges what they're feeling. So don't say nothing, say something. But what we also say is don't try and fix it. You can't fix it. So just try to just listen, active listen, be an attentive listener. Also, don't compare your situation to theirs. You may well have lost the exact same person in your life. If you've lost your mum and that person's lost their mum, comparing and saying, oh, I know how you're feeling, is quite frustrating when you don't know the relationship between that person and the person who's died, and how that's affecting them. So saying yeah, I would avoid comparing your situation, and also minimizing the situations. For example, many people grieve the loss of a pet very significantly, the loss of a pet. A lot of people might only have a pet for companionship, and that can be an intensely strong relationship, very important to people. And people who don't have that relationship with an animal, when that person loses a cat or a dog or something, may say, oh, you can always get another one. When are you going to get another dog, or when are you going to do this? And that could be hugely hurtful and minimizing the pain that person's experiencing. Also, don't be afraid to bring that person up. So often, if you're thinking about the person who has died, then absolutely the person who is grieving them will be thinking about them too. We say their name, just ask about that person. People want to talk about the person that they're missing. So I hope some of those are useful. So if you're a line manager, helping an employee return to work is a really important part of the grieving process. So some things that could be helpful, and these, you might not be able to do these situations in working remotely or do whatever, but if you can, it would be really nice for you to meet for a coffee away from the workplace prior to that person coming back to work, and just giving them that opportunity to talk to you without everyone else around, without about how they're feeling, and that could be a really great rapport builder for you and them. We suggest discussing a phased return to work. I know that there could be guidelines that state you've got so many days of compassionate leave available to you, but I think ideally you really should be providing flexibility for that person wherever possible. And then reducing the workload and high demanding critical tasks wherever you can when they do get back into the workplace, as the brain fog and the overwhelm that they could be feeling would make challenging, difficult, complex tasks really hard, and they may end up making mistakes, and that might just create more issues for you further down the line as an employer. So it probably makes more sense really to give them tasks that will be and like ramp back up to pre-bereavement levels. That being said, these challenges can come and go. People can be in a really good state. You can get into a sense of security, a false sense of security, that person's coping absolutely fine because they've come back to work, they want to do everything, they've got this heightened activity and productivity, but then 3 months later, 6 months later, when time has passed and people aren't asking questions anymore, people have forgotten because they're getting on with their own lives, their own jobs, that they might have moved on. So you might notice that people's productivity might struggle further on down the line. So it's really important to keep having that conversation, that communication open between you and that person. We also suggest as well that you signpost to appropriate support. So you, as the line manager, it's really important for you to have a like inside and out understanding of your bereavement policy, and what your organisation can do to support that person, but there will be limits to that. So knowing where you can then signpost that person to after that is really important. And that could be to your own employee assistance programme, if you're lucky enough to have one, which can give people free counselling. It could be signposting to a trained member of staff who has been trained as a grief first aider, which is something offered by Cruse, and I'll tell you about in just a few moments. You could signpost them to Cruse directly or some other support agencies, and later on in this presentation there is a slide where you can access our signposting document, which is really very useful. And then as a workplace, as a whole organisation, what can you do to support bereaved people? I think it really does start from the top, and it really does need to be a whole organisational approach, which is that you need to build a culture of compassion in your workplace. You should lead by example. You should ensure that staff feel comfortable when speaking up about their well-being. And when I say lead by example, what I mean by that is if you're comfortable to talk about your own experiences, if you experience a grief yourself, acknowledge that you need support too, and that you need to take time off too. I think that's a really important thing, and just to encourage staff to talk, not just about grief, but about all mental health and well-being is really, really important. The policies and practices, implementing supportive policies and practices. I've already talked about this, but it's really key, and I think it's really important. It's often overlooked. Is having a policy in place that is considerate and compassionate to the individual. I have a colleague who has experienced a loss herself. Her mum died while she was working, in a place where she and her sister were both working in the same place, and they had different line managers. One of the line managers followed the very limited bereavement policy to the absolute letter, and she was afforded no flexibility or anything. She had, I think, 5 days, if that. And the other sister, she had a line manager who was more flexible and worked with her, and was more compassionate and helped with a phased return to work. And unsurprisingly, the sister that did not get that support, the sister who got the absolute basics and to the letter rigid following of a limited policy, she left that workplace. So it's really important to have these things in place, and for everyone to understand them and where to find them. And line managers should know this off by heart. They should know what to do, what flexibilities they have, how they can support people in different forms of bereavement and things like that. It's really important. And again, if you don't know where to begin with this, do speak to Cruse. We can help with that. And then there's training and resources for managers and staff. I think it's really key for every member of the team, especially line managers, to have grief training and have awareness training. We provide this sort of training. We also provide grief first aid, which I alluded to a moment ago. Grief first aid is a new program from Cruse, which is a really comprehensive course where it's 12 hours training, so it goes into lots of detail, much like the mental health first aid, but it really focuses in on grief. It talks about signposting to appropriate support. It helps people with that first conversation with someone who's grieving, gives them so that person who's returned to the workplace feels really supported and understood, and then that person can then signpost onto appropriate ongoing support. So the grief first aider is first line, and then the ongoing support could come from Cruse or an EAP. The grief first aiders are trained to handle really difficult conversations as well. We go into trauma-based bereavements. Suicide is covered. We also take a really keen interest on boundaries and self-care for that person. They once trained, that person could then set up a peer support network within your organisation. You could set up coffee mornings, and they could facilitate the conversations around grief for them. So really, really powerful course for you to consider, and we do a range of other ones too. So just going further into creating a supportive workplace, as I've already said, encourage open dialogue about grief and other mental health. Do have regular check-ins and team meetings, or provide feedback channels for staff as well. Something that's a really useful tip, actually, if you are managing a person who is bereaved, is to put a note in your calendar a year following, or for special events, special days for that member of staff, just so you can check in on them. So a year following the bereavement, it pops up in your calendar to just check in on this person, and that just to acknowledge it, and also be aware of it, and maybe make other people aware of it if you get feedback that they're behaving differently or whatever. And lead by example. Again, just really normalize conversations about talking about grief and reaching out for support, especially for groups who may be more resistant to talking about their needs. We find men struggle quite a lot to actually talk about the fact that they need support. We see it in our figures. We see that far fewer men reach out to Cruse than women do. So we're very keen to encourage more conversations and normalizing asking for help when you need it, especially with men. And then, as I mentioned, we have a whole host of training. Yes, we have grief first aid as the gold standard, really. If you're able to introduce that into your workplace, that would be incredible, and you would see a real change in compassion and understanding across your team. But equally, we can do our seminars like this by our trainers who are professional counsellors themselves. I'm not, but our trainers are, and they are incredible, and we get feedback from them from our participants all the time, just saying quite how much they have felt supported and felt safe when they're going through training with Cruse, because they have that background to ensure that the participants do feel well looked after. We have training that's quite specific as well, working with children and young people following a bereavement. If that's an area of focus for you, we do have training on that. In fact, we have a course this coming Friday that's going to be available as a public course, that one, and supporting people through suicide and a range of other factors as well. We have some training coming up that's new, which is about anticipatory grief. So if you know someone who has a terminal illness, or if a colleague or somebody has that scenario, then how do you support that person? And we have that training available soon. So in summary, there's a lot covered today, but hopefully there's been some useful bits of information in here. What we espouse and what we hope you can take away from this is that there is no timeline to grief. There's no hierarchy to grief, and everybody is it's valid for absolutely everybody to reach out if they're struggling, and that's why organisations like Cruse exist. You may experience a wait speaking to Cruse, unfortunately, at the moment, with demand being as high as it is, but there is someone there, especially on the helpline. And if you don't get through first time, do keep trying, and they will be there to support you. People do react differently to grief, and it can change over time. And I think that's a really key thing in the workplace, is if you see deviations from the norm with a person, either immediately after or even a year after that they've lost somebody, just take a minute to think, could this be a trigger? Could this have been triggered by the loss that they've experienced? And creating an open and compassionate workplace is essential for colleagues to navigate their grief well. And it's not just one person's responsibility, it's a whole organisation's responsibility. And it does need to be top down for it to be truly embedded and truly supportive. And if you do need support, here's our helpline number, so you can give us a call. The QR code that's on screen right now, if you scan that will take you to our signposting document. So if Cruse is not the right organisation for you, I'm sure the right organisation will be there. So that's a really useful resource. I will make sure that's shared with the team at Thrive, so that can be shared along amongst all of you. And then also, just as a final point, I mentioned that Cruse is currently in probably one of our most challenging periods that we've ever faced. In our 64-year history, we've never seen the demand we've seen. And as a result of the cost of living crisis, we have seen donations and funding drop. And so we have, in order to continue offering the support services that we do, we have launched a crowdfunder. And if you are able to, I understand times are difficult right now, but if you are able to scan the code on screen, or I believe the Thrive team will be sharing the link in the chat with you. If you can make a contribution to Cruse, would be hugely grateful. Of course, understand if it's not possible, but thank you so much if you can. And just this whole week, it's Grief Awareness Week, so Cruse is focusing on lots of different topics this week, and it's all free. We have Grief Insights Week from Cruse, and we have 30 minutes. 30 minutes of lots of different talks. We've got one this afternoon all about grief first aid by the creator of Grief First Aid. We also have a manager's guide to grief, so it will maybe go into a bit more detail from line managers than this talk did, and that's at 12 o'clock today. So do check that out, and there's a whole lot more besides. So thank you so much for listening to me for this 45 minutes, and I hope that that's been useful.